But there's a disconnect. I guess I'm running into. There's a disconnect from the intruder's perspective in terms of how do we get from Access Graphics? Because there's a lot. I say that because there's a lot baked into Access Graphics. There's a lot baked into the importance of that job. When I mention that job in this letter, I am mentioning that job for a reason. Whether you are the intruder, whether you're the Ramsey family, or whether you are the Judas of the Ramseys, you know, who they're jealous of the Ramseys. You put John and you focused on John, and you write to John, and in that writing, you display a very complex importance about Access Graphics. John no doubt sold it. Access Graphics is a great name, you know, very internet terms-y, but it tells me something about John that he named it that. He named it to catch people's eye, to get people's attention, to pull them in so that he could sell them when he got in front of them. John is a very good speaker, and that's why I say you got to watch John when he talks, because he's a very good speaker. He's a very good salesman, right? He's a very good negotiator. And so John, it's like a turn on for John to sit in front of you and to speak to you and mentally joust with you and try to get the best of you. When that person writes that letter, they are mentally jousting with you. That's the interplay in there. We are a small foreign faction. That's we're playing. But John, your business. I got to mention something about myself in this. If I'm looking at, let me switch over to the Ramseys doing it. If I'm looking at the Ramseys, we got to mention John's business. And that's why I say that's very narcissistic. Why are we mentioning your business? What does that have to do with anything? First of all, we skipped over Burke to go straight to JonBenet. I don't know why we did that. I don't know why we did that. And that makes me think, if this was the Ramseys, what were you doing in the household that centered around JonBenet so much? Right? Because why? Burke has been telling you, no doubt, for years, pay attention to me. Probably for at least 2 or 3 years since JonBenet started her pageantry, and probably even before then, when JonBenet got old enough to walk. And she started, and that personality started showing. And Patsy was so happy to have a baby girl, and John is so happy to have a baby girl, that Burke kind of gets, kicked out of the circle a little bit, without them even wanting to do that. They're so happy with JonBenet. JonBenet is now the center of attention. Well, if JonBenet is the center of attention, then it follows naturally that she would be caught up in some mess like this. Why wouldn't Burke be caught up in some mess? Maybe Burke doesn't realize that the fact that he's not as popular, let's say that word, he's not as popular as JonBenet, means that he wouldn't be entitled to be in any mess, like in any drama. People is like, he's an afterthought himself in that way, because somebody's like, oh, I don't really don't want to kidnap Burke. That, he doesn't seem like he'd be a fun person to kidnap, or he'd be the prize, or I don't want anything from him. Right. And I'm just going to say it is. Burke seems like that kid that brags a lot. He kind of humble brags. He's like a little bit of a humble braggadocious in that way. Like, to kind of say, like, if he goes to school, like he told us in the interview, I'm thinking about that. And he was like, oh, and he kind of, the way he was describing it was like, oh, all the people were coming up to me and they were asking about, the reporters were coming up to me and asking, about JonBenet and asking if my friends were telling me if I had, asking, they're saying the reporters asked if I had come to school and they were like, no. He loved that because finally the attention is on me, right? Finally, you guys are giving me the attention that I want. Sorry I had to go this way, but this is the attention that I want. However, when this scenario or situation happens, it's not Burke that is being unlived, it's JonBenet. Because again, JonBenet is at the center of attention again. And so when I'm writing, I'm talking about, hey, John, we know your business is this, that, and the third. So it's a very narcissistic way to focus on his business. And what it tells me is that the business was a very important part of the Ramsey's life. Not just in the fact that, you have a job, I go to work. It's a job. Not just in, oh man, well, of course it's an important part of my life in terms of, well, because everything I do revolves around it. Not in terms of that. We got that. You have to go up there. You have to be the executive. You have to be the president. You have to be there. Your life has to evolve around this business. It's business. It's no different than you having maybe you sell lipstick online or something like that, or you sell trading cards or baseball cards or something like that online on the eBay shop or what have you. And all you do is, eat, sleep, and breathe, baseball cards or lipstick. And everything that you do talks about lipstick or something like that, or your product. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about very much The Devil Wears Prada, where Meredith Grey, not Meredith Grey, why would I say that? Meryl Streep, I can't remember the lady's name. What's her name? That's bugging me now. And I need to go watch that movie again. You already know what I'm looking for. Miranda. Where did I get Meredith Grey from? I don't even watch that show. Miranda Priestley is giving very much Miranda Priestley in that this is my life. I have a emotional tie to this as this is who I am. There are some people who say, I'm just in this business to make money. You know what I mean? When I go home, I turn this off. But there are very much people who say, no, I am this. I eat, sleep, and breathe this because I am this. I love fashion. I can't see myself without fashion. I am fashion. I am nothing else. So when people tell you turn it off, you're like, I can't. Everything I do, everything I love, everything I enjoy about the world is fashion. That might be John. John is very much computers. I love computers. I love everything about computers. I talk kind of nerdy anyway. I talk about computers. I everything is computers. I want my kids to be STEM majors. Everything is computers. And so that would be the reason to mention Access Graphics in the letter, even though it's completely unrelated from anything else. That had nothing to do with anything. It's unrelated. So I'm with this gentleman and looking for a possible tie about Access Graphics because it's mentioned. But I don't think it means anything. But this here has me interested because that would make sense that you would be connected to Jeffrey Epstein. I need to see if there's a photo right here. I need to see if there's a photo about this. Quite honestly, I would like to know. So I want to kind of know if that's real. So looking up on Snopes.com was Ghislaine Maxwell photographed with JonBenet. And so it talks about that it's unproven. Talking about this is not the last known photo, or one of the last, I think is what they were saying. The identity of the woman in the background is unknown. Okay. Da-da-da. So I guess they're talking about this right here. Who is this? And so they're looking at the nose, looking for similarities here between the nose and the side profile, essentially. I don't know. I mean, could be. Because it speaks to John's power. I guess the importance of it is the fact that it speaks to John's power, because if you're teetering on being a billionaire and you have a plane, because I asked myself just how important was John Ramsey? Just who was this guy? Because if, depending on the level of importance that John Ramsey, this can't just be a simple unaliving of the average American family. This guy really had the ability to get out of this crime. Is essentially what I'm talking about. This guy legitimately had the ability to get out of this crime. If you're already working with, Jeff and Ghislaine, or them, because you know how it works. You meet these people and you're like, oh, guess who I met today? And they're the who's who of this, that, and the third. I don't really, I just now came to the knowledge of Jeff Epstein, in the last couple years or something like that. When they first broke out, I really don't know the guy like that, but trying to understand government ties, just how deep, were you selling the software for military use? Was it directly connected to you? Because I know you had Access Graphics, but what was your tie? Because, and I know you were in the Navy, but just how close were you? Okay, this person says $1 billion. That's not enough to make anybody celebrate. So when Boulder-based computer distributor, oh, this is okay. This is the article. $1 billion. That's enough to make anybody celebrate. So this is the article that I was talking about, and I think that True Crime Rocket Science was referring to. So when Boulder-based computer distributor Access Graphics Inc. passed the 1 billion mark in '96, tossed a luncheon at the Hotel Boulderado on Friday. So December 21st. That's what I wanted to know. I wanted to know what day it was. December 21st. Okay. A Dixieland jazz band made its rounds, blah, 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 to celebration. John Ramsey thanked his employees. Couldn't have done without you. 1 billion in sales, about 25% increase over the 800 billion we did. So year over year growth. That they posted. Next milestone is to reach 2 billion come before the end of the decade. That's for sure, he predicted. However, he went and sold the company. That's what I'm saying. You had already sold the company to Lockheed Martin, and you were in talks to sell it over to GE. So why are you predicting a decade out 2 billion in revenues? What's that got to do with you? And I'm wondering at this time, was he then, because I know he told his employees that he was leaving. Was, at this point in time, reaching the $1 billion mark has come relatively quickly for them. Companies formed in '89. They merged 3 companies: Boulder, Colorado, New Jersey, and Georgia, Okay, so that's the connection to Georgia. I was wondering. In 1990, they posted 59 million in sales, 120 employees. So they doubled. Almost doubled, more than doubled. While revenues have grown about 1,600%, employment has grown 358 to 550. Okay. About 380 are in Boulder, 100 in Europe, 20 in Mexico, 12 in Canada, some in Cali and Pennsylvania. Access Graphics is a wholly owned subsidiary of Bethesda, MD, you know, based. Lockheed Martin gets about 60% of its revenues from selling hardware. So they get about 60% of their revenues from selling hardware and software from Sun Microsystems out of Mountain View, Cali. Sun, known for its Unix, okay, and Java, is planning an office campus of more than 1 million square feet with more than 3,500 employees at Interlochen Business Park in Broomfield. Access is one of two distributors of Sun in the U.S. that is authorized to sell to resellers, which get customer support from Access and selling to end users. Ramsey said an important factor in Access's success has been the mix of products and companies it represents. Among the most important, besides Sun, are Silicon Graphics Inc. out of Mountain View and Hewlett Packard. So you do 60% of your revenues come from hardware and software. Where's the other 40% come from? The other 40% might come from, well, it's still, that would, what is that? Where does the other 40% come from? Because that's huge, but yes, as we've seen, just highlighting something here. It's published 5 days before JonBenet was killed, and so, and yes, thanks. I saw that, but all those companies have very generic names. Advanced Products Group. I gather at Access Graphics in writing software. It's basically a big reseller, of course, as we know. Basically, taking things and marking up is what they're doing. But when you take something and you resell it, basically, you have to be a good reseller. You have to be a good salesperson to get people to buy basic stuff. Yeah. So I'll say that this is part one. I want to think about this a little bit more, but I'll say that this is part one. And we'll jump back in on the next time. Yeah. So, but anyways, until next video, take it easy.